about time, spiritually speaking, time doesn't exist. So, people say, oh, that's a very cool statement, This philosopher is saying time doesn't exist. But it really doesn't. And I'm going to give you some explanations as to what time is. According to ancient spirituality, for as long as your mind is not moving, there's no time. You can test this at any time. If you go into even slightly deep meditation, you'll see that as soon as the mind chatter stops, ego stops. In other words, if my mind is not moving, the notion of Kambiz Naficy gets obliterated. As the ego is obliterated, so is time. So if you're in one of your favorite hobbies, engaged in it, and you lose track of time, it's not because time was there and you lost it. It's because when you're in that favorite hobby, you become so engrossed that you lose the name Lucy. When you lose that persona of Lucy, when the mind has no thoughts, there is no time. Time is an invention of the human being. It's not a spiritual advent. This is why you take a ladies' man. You take a ladies' man who's always loved women and women love him. So then this ladies' man turns to be 80 years old. So now his body is no longer fit for the womanizing, but his mind is still young. So his mind doesn't understand time, and he still appreciates beauty. This is what happens. If time was real, he would stop looking at beautiful women because his mind would just age. But in a sense, your body is aging, but time doesn't exist. Take a photo album of yours and get a picture of yours from the age of 4, another one from 14, another one from 24, another one from 34. Line these pictures together. If you look at them, there'll be physical changes, but it'll be the same soul living in every picture. You get degrees, you get education. I don't mean that. I mean your basic nature doesn't change. So when you say, oh my God, my children grew up so fast, I don't know what happened to all these years. And a guru would respond to you by saying that there were no years. That your photo album is just a bunch of recollections stored in the memory banks of your mind. I want you to go home and flip through your picture album. You'll see that there are a bunch of snapshots at moments, and those moments are gone. So when you say my life story, it's a bunch of picture frames stuck together. That's what your photo album is. When you say my life story, what is that? That's your mind insisting on giving life to the past. I mean, when you're completely in the spirit and when your mind is completely quiet with meditation, you're not even so interested in my life story. Like when you come out of deep meditation, if you flip through your photo album, the photo album will not be so nostalgic anymore. Why? Because for the quiet mind, there is no time. There is no passage of time. This is what happens. Whenever you follow your breath, you lose track of the passage of time. So watch this. Breath comes in, breath goes out. Breath comes in, breath goes out. If you stay with the movement of the breath that closely, for as long as you're doing this exercise of inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling, you'll find that during the time you're doing that exercise, there's no time. Why? Because as you focus on the breath, the mind stops. When the mind has no chatter, there's no ego, there's no Kambiz Naficy. If there's no Kambiz Naficy, there's no passage of time. So you can test this in your private room anytime you'd like. Follow the breath, and for a moment, time will disappear. Why? Because as you're following the breath, the name Lucy disappears. And the mind chatter disappears. What we're really saying is that the only reality is the now. When somebody becomes very mentally quiet, you know how they live? They step from one picture frame to another picture frame. There was a time when I lived at a sanctuary for 2 years in Iowa, and one morning my mind was so quiet that when I got up from my bed and my legs were just hanging over the bed, I suddenly had this experience of going from one unit of time to the next unit of time. In other words, I was stepping from now to the next now. And as I stepped into the second now, the first now would disintegrate. If you have a very, very quiet moment, it's like the eucalyptus tree will make a sound, and then the sound will be gone. And then you hear the crow, and then you won't hear the crow. That's it. I just described the reality of life. It sounds kind of uneventful, you know, because you like your photo album, you know, the high school prom, reunions, all of that. Reunions are spiritually very sick things to attend. They might be fun, you know, but what you're doing is you're forcing the laws of nature to go back in time with the reunion. So I've had my warm moments in reunions, but spiritually speaking, they're totally against nature. Because your mind is insisting on creating that reunion so you guys can turn back the minute arm or the hour arm of the clock. Let's talk about the clock. The movement of the arms of the clock, that's not reality. The only reality is the change in your inner states. Let's talk about that. When you have a great inner state, the passage of time is either very fast or non-existent. So in some of the best moments of your life, time flew by very, very fast, as if it didn't exist. In some of the worst times of your life, time tended to drag on. So listen to this definition. Time doesn't exist, but inner states exist. If you took a notebook and jotted down your memories of today only, you would see that at 7:05 you felt hunger, wondering when breakfast is going to be served. Then you had breakfast. At 8:15 you said, life is good. At 8:45 you received an email that made you a bit jittery. So see, these are all inner states. And because you had three inner states of, I'm hungry for breakfast, what a nice breakfast, and then the email, because you had three inner states, you think that time passed from 7:05 to 8:35. In other words, the movement in the arm of the watch is unreal. It's just your inner states. When your inner states are very pleasant, time just vanishes. When you're having a bad time, you feel as though time is slowing down. One other comment, everything in life has its own time. Instead of thinking like you're aging, simply think in terms of seasons. You know, it's like there's a time to pontificate and think. and then you get up and you act. There's a time for the grandchildren, there's a time for partying. It's just seasons, just the same way that the trees go through seasons. It's only our mind that says, oh, I am so sad about aging. That's the mind. If the mind were to be quiet, you wouldn't mind your age. It's all the mind. Every sense of incompleteness that you have comes from your mind. Let me try this cream to look more beautiful. That's from the mind. When your mind is quiet, all of this stuff is gone. So is time. So is your first name and last name. So God bless you. You have today. Take care of the now.